Okay, I'll call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Welcome, everybody. There have been a few meetings which have taken place from different groups of town, some of which the Finance Committee is not able to get a quorum for, and we had told people that we could not get quorums for the evenings, they just scheduled the meetings. So meetings were held, of course, as they wanted to. But we have a couple things we can do. The town meeting is May 14th. The first of the town meetings is May 14th, and the second one is going to be June 11th. Now, normally the budget book has to be in about 3 weeks before the second meeting, and I haven't verified that again this year with Chris. I'm pretty sure it'll be probably about that same kind of timing. So we have some time to put those things together, have some time to vote on the actual budget. At the May 14th is the day of the first time meeting. Yeah, May 14th. At the May 14th meeting, there will be a special town meeting in the middle of the May meeting, or after it starts, and there will be warrant articles for there, and we have to talk about those, and we will have to take a vote on those and take a vote on the items that are at the that will be presented at the regular town meeting on May 14th, and have that set for us. But the actual budget that we're responsible for preparing, we won't have to do until a little bit after that. Bob, you were at a meeting where we received copies of the warrant article for the May 14th meeting, and were some of you, Scott was at that meeting. Do you have an extra?
Yeah,
copy?
That's it, Rob.
So I think tonight, I don't want to have a long meeting tonight. I think we ought to talk about that May 14th special town meeting warrant articles. Get that straight in our minds. We probably ought to talk about the regular town warrant articles that are presented at the regular town meeting that night. And then we need to talk a little bit about the school budget. We need to talk a little bit about some things that we might say in our write-up for this year's booklet, because it's some key issues which are happening. So, anybody any other suggestions for what we need to do tonight?
I've got some minutes.
Got some minutes. Okay. We'll do those first and get those out of the way.
Bob, maybe you could just hit the highlights of the joint meeting, or?
He's the chairman.
Yeah, maybe that would be better to wait until we'll get through the nuts and bolts of the first two meetings, because that'll lead naturally into talking about some budget items, some things that we should be saying.
Okay.
Is that right?
Sure.
Okay.
I take it you didn't watch it on.
No.
I don't know if it was on either.
I'm sure you had a riveting performance.
No, I didn't have much of a part in it at all. I probably said more than Steve did, but not a lot more.
Okay, let's take these in order. The first one is a meeting from March 13th.
Will that be accepted as written?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The second set of minutes is from March 14th.
Will that be accepted as written?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Not all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I have minutes from March 15th.
Move to be accepted as written.
And I'll second those. Scott was not here. Any further discussion? If not, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. March 22nd minutes.
Move to be accepted as written.
I will second that. Do we have any further discussion, questions? If not, then all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then March 26th.
Move to be accepted as written.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion, questions? If not, then all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And the minutes of April 2nd, which you and I were not in attendance, Scott, so.
I move that be accepted as written.
Bob, you want to second those?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, any further questions? Not then? All in favor?
Aye.
And it'd be 2 abstentions. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the May 19th. Special town meeting. Scott, did you bring a copy of the May 19th?
I'm sorry, May 19th?
I'm sorry, May 14th, the special town meeting for May 14th. That'll be held in the middle of the first of the annual town meetings on May 14th. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, the first one is the pilot program. That's routine. I don't know if we need to even say anything about that.
Do we know how much they're gonna,
I don't know.
then we don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Are you aware of what the dollar amounts are that they're
I
talking about?
don't know what the details are on
Yeah.
Where is this?
I don't know if we
What
really
lot
have
of
to-
land is Granby Solar using? Do you know where their facility is for this?
that. Is that the Dickinson Farm one?
I'm not sure. That's what I'm
I
wondering.
think it
What
is.
it is. Okay.
And I don't know any details about it, unfortunately.
I mean, good question, just out of my curiosity. Have any of the towns ever done a like joint venture as opposed to just leasing land, actually became operators of the solar facility in conjunction with the private company?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I think East Hampton has.
Hmm?
I think East Hampton has.
East Hampton does?
East Hampton's
Okay.
got something.
They've got something that's
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah. And that's just they become their own power company.
I'm not sure if it's quite that, but it's
Yeah.
something along that line. He came over, the mayor from over there came over and
Mm-hmm.
spoke a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. They say, are they making money?
Well, they said so, but they hadn't been going too long, so.
Yeah, okay.
We may not have to formally comment on this, do we? It's not an expenditure of any sort.
What's the question?
We may not have to
need to,
formally
because-
comment
yeah.
on this one.
No, we don't.
Because it's not an expenditure
Yeah, it's not- yeah, it's
of
not.
any sort. It's not gonna be an appropriation. So I don't think that we have to, get up and make any statement about it. I will,
Though obviously it has an impact on finances because the amount of the payment is,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
let me double check that.
Yeah, I
We got
think-
Be nice to know how much.
at that joint meeting, Chris mentioned 2 or 3 things where the selectmen were gonna be getting additional revenue, added up to, I don't know, I think something over $100,000. annually.
Okay, Article 2 is for the ambulance department, $35,000. And did Chris mention where they're planning to?
We didn't talk about any of this, but.
You didn't
it-
talk about?
No,
Okay.
I mean, he just gave it to us. Well, it's gotta come from the ambulance fund. I mean, when I say that, you gotta have a borrowing source, and you gotta have a funding source.
Mm-hmm.
Can't borrow it. There's no available funds in the general fund. So the only place there'd be any available funds would be out of the ambulance department itself.
Yeah, I'm looking to see if there's anything on the line item about it.
Most of the, an awful lot of these articles are articles that we've had every year at the end of the year.
Mhm.
And typically, before we'd have a special town meeting that could address some of these, they would just come to the finance committee, and we'd look at the questions and be asked for transfers from the reserve fund. Since we have the opportunity of having a town meeting, and since the amounts get to be fairly large sometimes, we've actually had them on town warrant articles at town meeting. That's what apparently is happening this year. But it's really the same thing which has happened in quite a few years past for us.
Now, the fact that it's for personal services, does that have any impact of it coming out of the operating fund, the ambulance enterprise operating fund, or we consider it one and the same?
Yeah, the operating fund could cover anything for
Okay.
the ambulance department, I
All right,
think.
we're showing
They have,
35,000.
well, what they have to do is take it out of the retained earnings of the fund. That's the available,
Right.
Okay.
the retained earnings,
Okay,
and transfer it to the personal services thing.
Yeah, yeah.
okay. All right. I see no problem with this article.
Yeah, let's take a vote on a pending assumption that's gonna come from the ambulance fund. If it doesn't, I'll get back to us at our next meeting.
So I
Since
move
we-
that we would approve it pending that.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, then all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Article 3, Police Department Personal Service Budgets and Expense Budget. Is the account number for the reserve fund? Or is it-
No,
don't-
no.
No, this is different.
This is the snow and ice.
Ah, that's right. We're not having it, there's no article on here for extra money for snow and
No,
ice.
we got some left over this year.
Finally got budgeted an amount that worked.
Mother Nature cooperated.
Yeah. Okay, the next two of these, the police department, the personnel, and the dispatch department are both from the same fund.
No,
Okay.
so they're all the same.
They're from all the same. So, a motion to approve Article 3,
So moved.
a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And Article 4, from the same funding sources for the dispatch department. $500 for personal service budget and $1,000 for the expense budget.
Move we approve Article 4.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Do you have the account numbers for these next ones?
It's gonna be selectmen, and it's one of their wage accounts.
One of these accounts, let me,
5120 is part-time wages.
Okay,
That's the
so,
account that's had the money put into it and it hasn't been spent.
Right. Yeah.
So this year,
Yeah,
some of it is being spent.
yeah.
okay, I'll take a motion to approve Article 5.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Article 6, 9, 12.
Is this the one
Workers'
we-
comp.
That's workers' comp.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Chris did say why there was money left in the account. Can you remember what it was?
Have something to do with a prior year or
Yeah, or
the rate?
was it,
Did rates go down? I doubt that.
no, rates wouldn't have gone
Yeah, I was
down.
gonna say.
I think it may have been tied with the police officer that was
Okay.
at the eye
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
I think maybe it was paid out of something else, so the experience wasn't
So
as
the
bad
wa-
as it
So his
was.
wages were.
Oh,
wages
yeah, I
maybe
remember
went down.
hearing, yeah, remember that from something else. Yeah, I think you're right. Okay.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all right. Now, this is the article which.
You gonna vote it?
Well, no, we're gonna have discussion first.
Oh,
That's been moved and seconded, we're gonna have discussion now.
oh, all right, this is,
This is the article that is equivalent to one of the articles that was brought up at the previous special town meeting. Pay for the student from Smith Vocational. And was voted down at town meeting. As I recall, the finance committee at the time said that the town should recognize that this money does have to be paid. There is an opinion that if it's not approved at town meeting, then there's a bypass of the town meeting approval for appropriations to have the money basically on top of the taxes as a charge from the state. It is not a question of whether or not this has to be paid, I don't think. It's a question of how we want to do it, how the town wants to do it. And it can approve this article and do it like this, or sit back and then let the state come in and take the money.
I'm not sure it's quite that simple or clear cut.
Yeah.
Reason being that it's still an over an expenditure within the budget that it came out of.
Yeah.
So we're taking it out of the budget and creating it as a separate expense, but in reality, it's still a budget item. And just as a further example, there's no transportation attached to that sum of money. And there was originally. So I guess the same thing will be somehow or other, we have to pay the transportation too.
The other issue is this. This is an expenditure for the schools. Every year, as part of the whole budget process, there is a calculation made as to what the town's in-kind expenditures on behalf of the schools is. For moving into this budget season, that figure was calculated. A lot of it's based upon, I think, what happened last year. A number of it is based upon information you get from the state about what to expect is happening. I think that the town administrator and the schools, I think, agree on that figure. You know, there's not much to agree or disagree about. The records are there as to what money that's spent. The only The only disagreement right now for the last quite a few years has been on the retired teachers' health insurance, which the school system, I don't even know if they recognize that it's a school expense, but at any rate, because of a glitch 20 years ago or so, we don't at the present time count it against in-town expenditures. It's an expense for the schools, clearly, that every other town in the Commonwealth just about claims, but that is left out. But I think we probably ought to find out what the status of this one either is for this year or will be for next year. It's, and this is a different question from the question of how much money should we spend on the school budget. This is a question of, is the town going to keep a false set of books?
Mhm.
That's the question, and I don't like that myself, and I can't imagine that any taxpayer in town would like the town to be keeping a false set of books. But if this isn't counted, that's what happens, it's a false set of books. Now, this, again, has nothing to do with whether it has to be paid, and it has nothing to do with what the budget is for next year, because adjustments can always be made in the bookkeeping amounts, but it just seems to me this is an expenditure for the schools. So, I don't know, maybe the rest of you have comment.
I don't think there's any question, but that it's an expenditure for the schools. I mean, if we had approved a transfer, it would have gone to the schools.
Right.
Consequently, they recognize that it's their expenditure or their expense.
But in addition to that, it's now an expense to the town.
Well, everything that the school has is an expense to the town too, but
But I mean, now it's like on us, the town has to fund this one way or the other.
I'm not 100% sure of that. You know, the problem is, to prove it, probably requires some legal expenditure, and maybe people getting very upset. I mean, to my way of thinking, the school committee has no authority to spend any more money, to obligate themselves to spend any more money than their budget was. And consequently, if something comes up that's unexpected, that's a tough situation to deal with. But it's up to them to deal with it, not to say, we can't deal with it. You guys take care of it.
Yeah, but ultimately it stops with the town, you know.
Well, I'm not sure,
Yeah.
no, I'm not 100% sure of that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the town will pay for it, but maybe,
Yeah,
I mean, there has to be some repercussions for any elected official that spends more money than the town appropriates to them.
yeah.
Yes, the town's on the hook because it's on the hook for the actions of its officials.
I mean, there is a statute that sets forth repercussions, but, or a CMR,
Yeah.
rather, that sets forth repercussions, but.
But Chris the other night, no, when he was with us, he mentioned there's a spot on the cherry sheet for appropriation deficits.
Mhm.
Well, I looked, not on the chair sheet, on the recap sheet. I looked on the recap sheet. There is nothing that specifically is called an appropriation deficit. There's a category other, so it could be put in there. But it's not like there's something you automatically have to check off and say there aren't any.
Mhm. Well,
Now,
ultimately, it's a decision of the select board, though.
But obviously, an appropriation deficit is different than an overdrawn revolving fund or overdrawn grant. I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
it is.
which is why the overdrawn grants and revolving funds
Yep.
drag on for a couple of years before somebody makes enough of a mention to get them dealt with.
Well, what do we want to do on this one?
Well, one of the questions is whether we want to do anything before we find out an answer to the question. The other is to say that we should find out the answer to the question and find out the appropriate way to inform the town.
All right, then.
But it's a small amount of money.
How about this, I'll move that we set this one aside until we get further information and then revisit it at our next meeting once the information is in place.
We could do that. We could just go with the theory that it's a small amount of money compared to some of the other things we're talking about. And that at the town meeting, at the special town meeting, there'll be an opportunity for people to ask questions and debate whether it is something that should be taken out of the current school budget.
Yeah, but we move now to approve it.
Uh,
It gives a sense that we are giving our blessing to it, as opposed to we don't have enough information.
Well, I think maybe thought of as a vote only to say that if we do believe that this has to get spent one way or the other, then we could recommend that it be spent by taking it from those funding
Yeah,
sources that's
okay,
here
that's-
now.
As opposed to leaving
And
it for.
as opposed to
That's right,
leaving
yeah,
it
that's
for
right,
the other
that's a-
mechanism and.
Yeah,
and,
okay,
for-
that's
Kind of
what
where
it
I'm at.
And
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and it doesn't really mean that you have to bypass the whole question about what's going to happen. And that may be something which is not resolvable until next year anyway, if it's not coming out of, if it's not coming, it's fairly late in the day for adding additional things to the in-town expenditures for the schools for this year. But on the other hand, we don't want to bypass the possibility of saying that that really ought to be there.
All right,
So
I'll-
what's the question that's in your mind that you want answered? Because I think that's entirely different than the article.
Well, we could recommend on this one, the same thing that we did at the last town meeting on the extra teacher salary. That the.
Yeah, but this one we already recommended to approve it.
No, we recommended.
we did.
No, we recommended to approve as part of the school budget. Yeah, we were recommending giving that to the schools for their budget. It was gonna be, this is different. This is the town spending the money out of a non-school account. What we were gonna do
Okay,
before was.
but as to the actual purpose of the appropriation, we recommended the town pay for it at the last special town meeting.
No, we recommended the town give it to the school for the school to pay for it. That's what I think we did. Let me ask
I might be able to offer some clarification on this. Could I see the article for a moment? This is article number 6. Okay. This is my understanding of the situation. This is in regards to the tuition at Smith Vocational, I believe. There's actually two parts to this amount of money that was spent as a result of this child being sent to Smith Vocational. The two parts are the tuition expense and the transportation expense. As it turns out, the tuition expense becomes a town obligation, just like we pay as a separate article on the annual town meeting to pay for Pathfinder. It is not a school expense. The transportation, however, is indeed a school expense. The school is required to transport the student. The town, however, is responsible for tuition expenses for those particular situations, whether it's Pathfinder or in this case Smith Voc. So I believe that's why Mr. Martin put it under a town account.
Does that mean that the previous article at the previous special town meeting was an incorrect article?
I don't know if I would say that, because the clarification wasn't brought until after that town meeting, the special town meeting.
Okay. Okay.
Are we dealing with the legal opinion that their labor attorney gave to them?
I don't know the source of that.
Because that's, if you read it, you know, out of context and without looking at everything, it doesn't mean much to me. But, you know, I get to a point when someone says it's the responsibility of the town, is the school department not acting for the town?
Oh, yeah, they are.
I would think so.
Clearly, they're an agent of the town.
I mean, and as I said a few minutes ago, they asked for a transfer to the school department to pay it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And I have a hard time believing that it's the same as Pathfinder Regional, because there is a net school spending requirement with Pathfinder Regional,
Right.
and there isn't with people that are under the Chapter 74 program for non-resident tuition over at Smith Vocational and Agricultural School.
Yeah, the other thing that makes me wonder about this is that I thought that there was included in the school budget for next year tuition for 2 students to attend Smith. And that destroys that whole argument. I mean, that
No.
destroys the logic.
No, there isn't.
There is not,
To the best of my knowledge, there is not, because there's a separate article as a warrant article, not as a school article, for 2 students to attend Smith.
that's a separate warrant article, not in the school budget.
And the way it's presented, it is not part of net school spending either. But the state recognizes tuition to Massachusetts public schools. So that it's not as if it's an unheard of expenditure of money. Because one of the sections of that the state deals with is out of district costs. And it's mass public schools, non-public schools,
All right, well,
special ed stuff, that out of state.
no matter how you cut it, we gotta pay this, right? We're obligated to pay this.
Under the big umbrella, yes.
And on that basis.
I don't have any problem paying it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
All right, then, within the context of what we need to do tonight, I would move that we approve it, and then we let the chips fall where they may, and we get those questions answered later on.
I mean, we already recommended paying it, and nothing has really changed.
Yeah, so,
All right.
let's just.
Well, yeah, given that this is different from what I thought was happening
Yeah.
at the town,
All right,
special
so
town
I
meeting earlier.
move that we approve this, Article 6.
Okay, actually, we already,
Do we?
We already got past that.
did we have a motion?
No, no,
and a
we-
second, or was it
Then you
a?
wanted to discuss.
Discuss it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
We made a motion to approve it, and then
But we didn't do
then
anything
we
on it.
started talking about
Talking
it.
about it, so.
okay, so the motion is to approve this as.
No, actually, I made a motion to set it aside, but, so I'll basically restate.
No, that was, yeah, but there was another
All right.
motion before that, I think, too.
That was this
Go
one.
ahead, go ahead, make a motion again.
Move that we approve this.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
And I don't know what's gonna happen to the transportation amount.
Well, as I said, we gotta pay it, let's move that we approve it, because we gotta pay it. Otherwise, let's just follow they may after we find out. So, it'll be interesting to see.
The, does anybody know, there's a separate set of charges that we get for charter schools, I think,
No idea.
right, from the state? And that becomes, I think we pay that, but that goes into the net school.
Yep.
In town.
Yep.
Right. I don't know if I've got those figures here.
Yeah, it's a cherry sheet charge.
Yeah.
And the local school committee, or the school department, reports it to the state on their end of the year report. So it's, even though they do nothing physically with the money because the state has taken it, they still show it as an expense.
So the question is, do we have, here in the net school, the town contribution?
It shows up.
There is a charter school assessment, tuition charter school assessment. It's close to $195,000 for next year. And there's a charter school reimbursement, which is what, 10% of that, a little less than 10% of that. Special education assessment. So this does this mean that there are these multiple buckets of tuition and other expenses? We've got stuff that happens here in town. If students go to another, they go to South Hadley, Belchertown, Ludlow, then we lose Chapter 70 money, and it gets transferred to school district. We don't have to pay any transportation. Pathfinder, we have a separate budget item for Pathfinder, and that money gets appropriated at a town meeting. And that, I think, does not offset net school spending. I don't think that offsets.
There's a net school spending that goes with, requirement that goes with
Goes with
Pathfinder.
that, but not the.
I mean, they're treated like like we're part of that district, and the rules for
Right.
that district are the same as they are right here in town.
Right, but we don't, it doesn't get, it doesn't figure into the town in-kind expenses
No,
for the schools, and I
because
think
it's
the
an
reason is-
entirely
yeah,
separate.
It's the children are separated out before they ever start making the calculations. They know how many are going to Pathfinder, and there's a separate calculation for that, and there's a Chapter 70 amount of money, which once upon a time used to be given to the town, and the town transferred that. Now they just do the transfer directly. So we've got that, and then we've got schools like Smith Voc, which under some circumstances you're required to pay the tuition of a student attending, and under other circumstances you're not required to pay the tuition for a student attending. Do any of us know whether the schools have a role in that? For example,
Yeah.
I think the
Chris
situation.
talked about that at the last meeting, didn't he?
Well, I read Chapter 74.
Yeah.
I won't say I read Chapter 74. I read about it on the Department of Education website. And the local school district has to make known to all the students of the opportunity to take courses at all sorts of different places. And there's a deadline when they have to have it out by. And then there's, and let me go back one step. Chapter 74 is for schools that do not deal with school choice. If you want to go to Smith Vocational, doesn't matter where you are, you're gonna, I shouldn't say that. If you're not in Northampton and you want to go to Smith Voc, you're gonna have to pay full tuition. The school is gonna get full tuition, okay? There's an application process. If you want to take a course that Smith Voc offers that is not offered by you, or in the case of us, Pathfinder Regional, then the town is required to pay for your tuition and your transportation. If you change your major or your course of study while you're over there, you've got to start all over again. You can't go over as a botanist, we'll say, and decide that you want to go into sheet metal work. If you want to do that, you got to start all over, and then you probably end up at Pathfinder because they offer it. So, does that answer it?
So that if a student.
Plus, there's moving out of, if you're, let's say you lived in Northampton, and then you move to Granby.
That's a different issue.
Right, but there's other ways for the town to be on the hook for it.
But you've got to stay in that same course.
Okay.
If you get out of the course, then you're going to start all over again. So that if you want to do something that Pathfinder does, you can't do it at Smith Voc, unless you want to do it at your own cost.
It has to be unique.
Or if a
It's
student
be-
makes more than $18,000, then the town doesn't have to pay either.
Is that right?
Yeah. So,
Does anybody know what happens to the Chapter 70 money for that student? Does it go to Granby or does it go to Smithville?
Don't know. I would say it probably doesn't come to Granby, but I don't know that for a fact.
It's gotta go
Yeah, it would
someplace,
make
doesn't it?
sense. It would make sense to go to Smith.
No, not necessarily.
No matter what the differences between any two school districts are, they're gonna agree the money's gotta go to one of them.
Well, the Department of Education sets the tuition rate.
yeah, set by the commissioner. Yeah.
So he's got a little latitude in, well, no, I think there's a formula.
Yeah, set by the commissioner and paid in 2 equal installments.
Well, how do charter schools work? Does anybody know, for students going to them? And because we get charged a charter school cost.
It isn't as heavy as it is to go to Smith Woke, I'll bet you. I mean, just to give you an example, if you want, under school choice, you're dealing with $5,000.
Yeah, well, 5,700 is the.
No, I couldn't find the 5,700. I found something that said the lesser of 75% of your cost or $5,000.
Okay, but students have a choice, assuming there's room to go to a charter school if they want? Or are there other qualifications that you need?
Well, they have to get accepted, but yeah, they have a choice.
Yeah. So if they get accepted by a charter school, then,
School district, well, here basically is from the Department of Education. School district pay tuition for residents, pupils attending Commonwealth charter schools. 2 programs that directly offset the tuition, Chapter 46 aid and facilities aid.
okay.
So,
And that's then entirely separate from, although you have to send someone to Smith Voc if they meet the other qualifications. Somehow that doesn't work through this system of the state has of taking money in one bucket and transferring it to another bucket.
Apparently not.
It's very odd. All right, we can get a little
Actually,
more information about some of that.
we're probably, when we're talking the Chapter 74 program, I don't think that's quite the same as if somebody wants to go to South Hadley and South Hadley weren't taking school choice. I think it's
yeah, that's different. This is
74 is for vocational type education.
Yeah, and 46 is specifically for charter. So,
Yeah, and our question is there in fact a completely different financial arrangement between the entities involved for the charter schools than for vocational schools? Now, if you get into a vocational school, you want to take something in a vocational school, and it's not offered at the school that your town belongs to, so you get to go. And there are some monies apparently transferred back and forth, but the monies do count for some operations, do not count for other operations. This mystifies me, but maybe we should check and see what happens.
I don't understand what you're.
Well, why isn't there a charge for the vocational school, just like for the charter school? You know, what's the difference?
Tony?
Probably nothing. Just the manner in which the payment is made.
Yeah, and the manner
No,
also.
because well, Okay, but then that would say that then this should qualify as an in-kind expenditure for the town. Because the charter schools do.
I would agree with that.
Okay, what is?
I mean, I would agree that this is considered net school spending for the town of Granby School District.
Okay. So
I
we're
mean,
back.
and if it's being paid by the treasurer of the town or the selectman's office, whoever is actually physically doing it, then it's an in-kind expenditure. And if it's being done by the school department, it's part of their regular net school spending.
Yeah, so that's back to what one of my original comments were, that if that all is correct, and this is not counted as in-kind expenditures, then there's a false set of books, which is being promulgated. So we gotta check on this.
Would you like to see the way I worded that scene? I understand there'll be a FY19 warrant article for two students to attend Smith Oak. Why is this treated as a separate article rather than part of the school budget? That's the first part of the question. And then the second one, am I correct that as a result, the original 682,000 shortfall is really more like 716,000, since this cost, regardless of how voted, is still a net school spending item? So I don't know if it's a false set of books, but the number wasn't 682 in my mind. It was the $35,000 or $6,000 on top of that.
The Finance Committee's job for the town is to make recommendations on expenditures. But besides making your recommendations, I think we have to say that we really don't care what the town does. I mean, it's up to the town to decide what they want to spend money on. What we hate above all else is people having to make decisions on incomplete facts or incorrect facts. And that's, I think, the thing we want to worry about here. And we go through the process we go through and come to a conclusion that financially we think this makes better sense for the town, or this makes better sense for the town, whatever it is. But the idea that people are presented ideas with incorrect facts is just anathema to what the role of the Finance Committee is, and what we think as a taxpayer someone should hate no matter what. So at any rate, let's go on. The next one is
Is that the school teacher?
$49,163, yeah.
Out of the reserve fund.
And this goes to the school department.
That's our reserve fund, or the town's reserve fund?
132, I thought the reserve fund, okay.
I think it
Reserve
was
fund is
reserve fund.
920, I think. Isn't the reserve fund 920?
And what specifically was this for, remember?
The teacher.
Or was it the teacher? Okay.
Reserve fund. 132.
Well, I guess again, if we're obligated to pay, regardless.
Well, the wages.
In
are-
my mind, if
wages
we're
are spent.
obligated to pay every time some elected official wants to spend some money on a good purpose, then they don't need a finance committee. We don't need a budget. We just need a blank checkbook.
Where's the 132?
It's 132.
I go from, I don't see 132 as a.
You don't.
There's only one reserve fund.
Yeah. Reserve
shown
fund,
as a-
on the budget sheets we have, is account number 01-920-5780-000. This one says
132.
132.
Department 132 is the finance committee.
Finance committee is number 131.
It's still the finance committee.
Finance committee doesn't have any budget money. Doesn't have, I mean, does it have?
You have the reserve fund.
No, well, no, we're in charge of the reserve
Right.
fund. but
Oh, all right, I was at number 133,
Mhm.
133.
and went to the sheet before it, assuming that it would be 132, and it said reserve fund, but it's got a number 920.
Okay,
Yeah, no, the finance committee is Department 131. And we've got a small amount of money in there. But the reserve fund is under Budget Department 920. And it's responsibility of the finance committee, but I don't know what number 132 is.
There isn't one,
There isn't one.
so Chris made a mistake.
So, but they better get another, they better get a,
Because I asked him what 132 was, and he said the reserve fund.
yeah,
So there's no question
I don't think-
as to what his intent is.
yeah, but that's not what the budget is, so. Let's,
So what should the number be?
920.
if it's from the reserve fund, it's gotta be the number 920, Department 920. All right, do we wanna talk about this under the assumption that it's to come from 920?
well, same arguments before, not even arguments, just same observations as before.
It's even more difficult because we didn't approve it the first time.
Yeah.
Well, again, as I recall, we made the statement that all of the items at the previous town meeting were going to have to be paid. And at that point, I think what we said was that as a gesture, if the town wanted to vote it down, we weren't gonna be upset about that. That it's sort of a message to all departments, which seemingly every other department knows and understands, is that you're not supposed to spend money that you have not been authorized to spend. So I think that was the basis of.
What happens if we vote not to approve this, pragmatically speaking?
John will get up at town meeting and
Say we.
make mention of that. and-
Yeah, we don't approve this. You know.
Well, we approve paying it, but we could say we don't like where it's coming from.
Well, but I don't think we have a choice. I think either we approve or don't approve. That's our mandate.
Yeah, I don't have a problem, Morris. I mean, the end of the year, because we're folding into a number of places where there's some money available.
Mhm.
These things that would normally come and have a call on the reserve fund, we know we're not going to have
Any more.
$140,000 worth of requests. All the big requests have been taken care of. There could be some small requests, and even a couple of the small requests, my understanding is that there could be another place that can find some money for that. Maybe the 250.
Mhm.
So, I don't think we object to where it's coming from, but the question is, do we want to make the same comment as last time? I don't know if it's worth it twice in a row. There's a whole bigger issue about expenditures for the schools and what the appropriate approach is, which I think we might as well wait and just talk about then and, forget about this. The town said it once, if the school department doesn't want to listen to what the town says, they don't want to listen to what the town says. We're not the legal enforcers of it.
Want some rationalization?
Okay?
17,000 for the police department is a bigger chunk of money against their total budget than 49 is against the school department's budget. Difference, of course, is one was a conscious decision and the other one was brought on by circumstances, probably, but.
Yeah, and they haven't in fact spent the money yet, because theoretically you could lay off police officers. I don't think you can do that with school teachers. It's a tricky thing because we don't approve monthly budgets, we
Mhm.
approve annual budgets. And that's why some time ago, we encouraged departments, rather than come to us in July and August with requests for variances in the budget, that they wait until further year to see if in fact money appears elsewhere. Now, this is of course different if a major truck breaks in two
Right.
and there's no way that can be covered, then that's a different situation than saying, well, we have a broken axle, which we didn't expect.
Mhm.
Because they have an amount of money in their budget for certain things, and so we asked them to proceed through the year a little more. Just, we know about it, and we have some brief discussions on it, that it's not a problem, that that money can be spent, but just see what you can do with your budget, first of all. And that's not the situation with the schools. So, but it is, I agree that it is a smaller percentage.
On the other hand, it was a conscious decision on their part, and that's what
Right.
bothered
Yeah,
me.
I think it bothered,
I mean, that sort
No,
of,
that's what-
clearly it bothered all the people who came to the special town meeting.
Yeah,
Bothered them a lot.
that's the conundrum for what we're trying to do right here. So by saying we approve it, are we tacitly condoning that, or
we're cleaning up their mess.
do we say we don't approve it?
Or we're doing what's best for the town.
Yeah, we are obligated.
But the town's gonna pay one time or the other, the question
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
is
that's
there-
it, that's it. So how do we want to handle that? There's no third option, it's either approve or not approve.
I think we ought to, go ahead and approve it, and, you know, given that it's gonna be corrected from a non-existent source of funds.
I mean, we should approve it coming out of
Approve it coming out of 132,
non-existent account.
yeah.
We're gonna have to mess up, and we're gonna have to go into the future with a big hole in our budget.
That's a lot of Mass Municipal Association conferences, John, to get to 49 grand.
What's it?
You'll be dead before you ever go to that many.
All right, so I move that we approve this, subject to the correct account number being 01-920-5780-000.
Do we wanna be that specific, or we just wanna say as long as it comes from a real funding source? Maybe, you know,
I'll take that as a friendly amendment,
okay.
So what?
a friendly amendment
To the motion.
to the motion.
As long as-
His was a friendly amendment to your motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Article 8, Public Buildings Department Personal Services Budget. 192. 192 is public buildings.
Yeah.
So,
I'm just looking to see what 5290 is. $5290 is waste removal services.
okay,
Looks like we budgeted on
Yeah,
the
we
high
did.
side a couple of years in a row.
Yeah, we did. So I move we approve this.
do I have a second?
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Article 9, 543 is Veteran Services, and this is
Veterans Day, Mr. Chief.
this is to take money from someplace elsewhere in their budget for this. So it's
Is he doing some kind of
Some dollars.
training, or he's offering his services, right?
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, so I move we approve this.
Yeah, Veteran Services, we get back 3/4 of what we
Yeah, we
spend.
do.
So in the original budgeting, it was assumed that we were gonna get 3/4 of this back because it was someplace in the
Yeah.
budget. So this really doesn't affect the budget.
You won't get, no, you won't get this back.
It's not, this one, is this not part of the,
It's not part of the payment to veterans, it's payment to the agent.
okay,
That's the only personal
All right.
services.
okay.
Agent is in fact the fire chief.
Yeah.
He is
Yep.
newly appointed.
So, again, I move we approve it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Are you looking at the funding?
Yeah, it's from the ordinary allowance account,
Okay,
so it's, obviously, you didn't have as many people come in this year, so.
okay. All right.
So
All in
if we
favor?
spent it on ordinary allowance, we'd have gotten our reimbursement.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Article 10, 1.4 million free cash for the high school roof and the attendant pieces, skylights, roof ventilator units. We've had discussion about this in past meetings.
We get bids.
Yeah. So.
It's no longer, it's beyond patching at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if we make a motion and then we can see if there's any more we want to discuss about it.
Move we accept it.
Do you have a second? Do you have a second?
Second.
Do any further discussion beyond what we've had already?
No?
If not, then all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
My guess is that probably if we were to go through a long drawn-out calculation with the financial plan, the answer would be we might want to borrow for it. But we don't have that in place at this point in time,
No.
so.
And it needs to be done. Would be.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's not a question of doing it, it's a question of
Yeah.
What does borrowing require for a vote from the town?
2/3.
2/3 at town hall, but it only requires a ballot vote if we're voting to increase property taxes to pay for the short-term borrowing, right?
So that-
If we wanted to, we want a debt exclusion,
Debt
then it
exclusion.
would take a 2/3 vote at town meeting, and it would also take
Simple majority.
simple majority. So, go on to Article 11, which takes the rest of free cash and puts it into stabilization fund, which is what we usually do with free cash.
I'd hold off on this article.
Hold off,
Giving a recommendation
okay, until when?
until the selectmen decide whether they're gonna let the school have the money.
Talking about the $230,000.
No, 28,000.
This 28,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to the 230, or
What 230?
There's no 230.
there's no 230?
200.
Okay.
In addition to the 200?
Do we know when the selectmen are gonna take that action?
They may never take it.
It's true.
I don't know whether, when the comment was made, it was made as a way to end the conversation, or whether there was an intent to talk about it or not, I don't know.
Okay.
This has been a published warrant article. So,
They could let it sit in free cash.
but wouldn't they would have to withdraw this article on the floor.
You would draw it on the floor since they made it. Or recommend that everybody turn it down. And but that would leave it in free cash so that when the school budget came up, it could be 28,000 from free cash
Okay, now, they
and
can.
serious money from the stabilization fund.
They can, they could make a motion to, do you need to make a motion to withdraw an article, or you just have to say you're withdrawing it?
No, I think they just,
Can somebody else stand up and make the motion?
They can do it.
I mean, if the person who put the article on, which this is presumably put on by the select board. All right, Board of Selectmen, if they decide at the last minute that they don't want this article, so they would just announce to the town that they do not want to present Article 11.
In the
Can't-
past, they've requested a no vote on the article.
But when you wanted to do very similar to that at the town meeting a year ago, and I can't remember what the article was,
They
You
want a
were
different
told that
procedure.
you couldn't withdraw the article unless you made it.
Yeah, my question is, if the person who has initiated the article decides they want to withdraw it at town meeting, can someone else at the meeting make the motion?
Make what motion?
Make a motion to have the town vote to transfer from free cash to some $28,000. Basically say, okay, they want to withdraw it, but that doesn't make any difference, somebody else in town wants to make the motion. Wants to
Well,
do
they-
this.
Yeah, but, wait a minute, let's be careful here. What would you?
Let me tell you what I'm leading
Yeah,
up to. What I'm leading up to is that I think we have to vote on this, whether it's gonna be withdrawn or not, because we don't know for certain it'll be withdrawn, or somebody else might make it. There might, other circumstances, this could come up. So we have to be prepared in case this is a motion. And we can wait and vote on it later on, but we can't, I think we can't say it depends on what the selectmen's intention is for other things to do with the money, because
Be prepared.
you don't know until the minute that this comes up, whether it's gonna be on the article, and it's on the warrant article, so we have to be prepared to make a recommendation.
So what if tomorrow the selectmen tell you that they're gonna change the way the motion is worded to be something or other?
Then they'd have to amend this because it's already been.
No, because they're reading it. So as
Okay.
long as the way they're reading it is close enough to the way it's put out to the public, they can do it.
But if it's close enough, then is our recommendation based upon this, or do we have to have a meeting and a discussion to make a recommendation based upon what's presented? And this gets back, though, to the second question that I had, was this. Suppose they say at the meeting, we want to withdraw this. And leave aside whether they want to do something else with the money, or whether they want to just let the money sit and go into free cash the following year. What if someone on the town floor stands up and says, Madam Chairman, I would like to make a motion and read this motion? Are they allowed to
If
do
they
that?
have the authority to withdraw it the minute
not
the
people-
article is called for, that's how you withdraw it. We withdraw the article, it is not up there. There is no article at that moment in time.
So whoever initiates the article has the complete authority as to whether or not that article will actually be voted on.
That's what you were told in the similar circumstance a year ago. I'm not sure I agree with it.
Could be, I think circumstances, one reason why I don't remember that exactly is because the circumstances I recall was that all the people involved, finance committee and everybody else, were in agreement on what needed to be done, what the outcome was that we were looking for, and that the rest of it became mechanics. So I don't think anybody even thought about arguing about the mechanics. The mechanics for this, the mechanics for that, both got to the same place. Whereas withdrawing an article so it's not discussed at all versus somebody else, kind of seems to me to be more than just the mechanics.
Well, I think it would be
Because
governed
it's
by.
two different outcomes that you're
I think the withdrawal and outright will be governed by the town bylaws, which I'm looking at right now. And in talking about town meeting, it is silent about withdrawal of articles. This is articles shall be considered in the order that they're on the town warrant. So I don't think they can withdraw it.
Which leads to a no vote.
Exactly, there's a.
Then that would be
Yeah, you can-
vote no.
Yeah, vote no.
Yeah.
No.
But it's
You
not a
still
withdrawal.
vote, but you still vote.
But the question of withdrawal, I think, is a question of town meeting time and whether or not the moderator would permit the withdrawal of the article for whatever reason or whatever.
What I'm saying is under the bylaws, I don't think the moderator has that discretion.
Yes, the moderator does have a discretion. The bylaws don't address withdrawing an article, as I recall.
That it's silent. So it's silent on that point, but what it does say specifically is articles shall be considered, not an option, not may be considered, but shall be considered. So once they're published, they shall be considered.
Right.
So I would argue the moderator does not have the authority to withdraw or to allow it to be withdrawn. That it's published, it's there, can't be withdrawn, you vote on it.
I think on the surface of it, I think you might be correct.
Yeah. So, because there's no optionality in the language of the bylaw about it. And the fact that it's silent, it just says, shall be considered, don't withdraw.
If the moderator happens to be watching this, I think this is an interesting question. We would appreciate for spending a little time thinking about it.
Moderator's your cell phone number, see if she'll call you.
I suppose if we vote for it and if somebody changes it on town meeting floor.
Yeah,
The only
we could deal with it then.
thing would be if it was common knowledge that the article was gonna be changed before town meeting.
Yeah. All right, so I move we approve it.
As is, and if it changes, then
Yeah.
Right, right,
that's something else.
okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, then all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, well, we got the articles for the town meeting that are gonna be on, a portion of town meeting on May 14th. This is, it's 4 or 5, it's 5 pages. So,
All right, well, in terms of spending, in reading this, I don't see any surprises other than what we've already talked about in the review.
You know, is, as I recall, for these articles, what I've generally done for the finance committee is, we don't make our speech
Right.
at the first meeting, the second meeting, but the first meeting, because articles come up. I think what I've done in the beginning is say that we postpone our speech to the next meeting, but that for the articles that are coming up here, the finance committee is in favor of all of them, or I say we're in favor of all of them except for one we'll talk about at the time, or I say we're in favor of all of them, we may have more to say on them, but just something very briefly like that. So, keep that in mind as we go through and vote these. I don't know if we have to, we can look at all of them, but I'm not gonna stand up and give a specific
Yeah.
approval of.
I don't see a single one here that we haven't discussed one way or the other.
I mean, some of these are, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all boilerplate stuff that happens every year, and there may be some financial implications, but we're in favor of all of them. Most all the stuff on here is routine.
Yeah.
And so, I think maybe the way to proceed in the interest of time is that if maybe we do the same thing here and vote a motion to approve all of these except for any ones that we want to talk about more specifically before we vote for them. So,
Well, do we have a question about any of these? Or do you have a question about any of these?
I had a question about number 9, which
Okay.
is the personnel bylaw pay schedule.
Mhm.
You know what?
Did we get that as part of the package? I don't know if we got that as part of the package.
No.
It was,
But we got,
the.
I think we got had a year ago, that's why I'm asking this year.
The budget guidelines were the 2% increase in compensation
Did
plus.
they change any steps? That's what they did a year ago. They had a 2% change of the schedule, but they added another step up on top, so that as a practical matter, everybody that was at the top step got a step increase, which they hadn't been entitled to prior. And nobody made much mention about that. Remember that one?
Yes, I remember that. Surprise.
All right, let's hold this one off and let me get more details about.
Yeah, I mean, if it's just the 2%, that's fine.
Okay, so we'll hold off on that one.
Any other ones we have questions?
OPEB,
And we talked about the mini pumper,
yeah, we
talked
actually,
about the dump truck, we talked about
Pathfinder's actually decreased a little bit, which is.
the Durapatcher.
Oh, yeah, there's one in here I think we want to talk about. Not that we haven't already talked about it. Article 14.
Yeah, that's. the one
Yeah,
that was,
okay,
yeah.
yeah. Missed that. So we only have questions about Article 9 and Article 14.
All right, I would take a motion then to approve the warrant articles as written with the exception of Article 9 and Article 14.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Just a question, housekeeping. Are you eliminating the first? So many articles where they're non-money, or are you gonna? In other words, do we start with number 9?
No, we actually started Article 7.
Because they're financial ones, is that the point?
Well, we're setting,
Oh, no, actually, we start with Article 4, we're talking about only there.
we give compensation involved, fees and things.
Yeah. I think it's just simple to say we move and approve everything except 9 and 14.
We can, I assume, vote to approve things which we're not required to even talk about.
Yeah, no. Well, you think about it, all of them have something to do with money except for Articles 1 and 2.
Well, a minute ago, he didn't want to comment on an article because it dealt with money coming in.
All right, well.
And now we're saying, let's go ahead and do it
We
with
have-
money coming
We have a
in.
motion, and it's a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded.
And the money that comes into the cemetery commissioners for the Article 6,
Mhm.
that's only on there for the publicity of the people that bought grave sites. There's no requirement to vote it,
Well, it's nice that they did.
keeping up with historical precedents.
I'm indifferent as to,
Well, we already have a motion and a second.
okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Sam?
I don't know. Well, the reason I'm doing it is because we voted in a certain way every other year.
Yeah.
And I would want us to continue to vote in the same manner.
Yeah.
And I don't remember whether we voted.
Okay, we'll hold off on 9 until next time we get together. Let's talk about 14. It's $34,532 for the purpose of funding the tuition for a Smith Folk and Agricultural High School student.
So we want to know the special conditions as to why? Is it because they moved, or is it because they have some course that is
We
not
don't know,
offered?
and we're not allowed to know.
We're not allowed to know.
One of each. One is the kid that was going there this year, so he's still entitled to go there.
Right.
And the other one is somebody that wants to go there.
And the two of them together add up to 34,000?
Twice what it,
Well, a little
it's
more-
twice what is
little
the
more.
article on the special.
Little more than twice, because this year it was $16,728 for one.
Is it more than twice?
Yeah, yeah, this year it's 17,266.
Oh, all right. So they've set the new rate.
About $500 more.
Yeah.
roughly. 498. If what you'd said before is the way things are supposed to work, then this is equivalent to our vote for Pathfinder, where it's voted as a separate amount because it's an amount which is outside of the school budget. If it's not supposed to be in the school budget, it's not supposed to be in the school budget. Is this for the school budget?
Are you asking or telling?
I'm asking.
I don't know what it is. I want someone to tell me that it needs, why it's being voted. Is it required to be voted as a separate article? And if the answer to that is no, it isn't required, then I want to know why we're doing it that way. And then I want somebody to acknowledge that since it is part of the net school spending requirement for the town of Granby.
Is that school spending required? You mean, does it count for the in-kind expenses?
Well,
No,
Nope.
I don't want to say in-kind expenses. Just
Okay.
net school spending for
Net
the
school
town of
spending.
Granby, whether it's paid by the school department or paid by the town, and then charged to the school. That,
yeah, all right, well, we don't have the answer to that
no,
tonight.
nope.
Just the question is, can we get it?
Yep.
And by
Yep. Well, we don't need to have our vote done until the day of the meeting.
Right.
So
So
I'll be able to get together sometime
yeah,
next week.
I was gonna say, so I think we hold off on this until we get that answer.
Oh, yeah, I don't think we should vote on
Yeah.
it tonight.
Yeah. Okay. You in agreement?
Agreed.
All right. Okay. Now, again, I was not able to attend any meetings for quite a while because of circumstances. I'm sort of under the impression that there's an argument going on as to who's supposed to be deciding what the schools are doing. Whether it's the select board or whether it's the school committee and who's supposed to be thinking about it and make recommendations to the town. And what I think the issue is this. First of all, there's no question that in the short run, short-term thinking, we spend whatever we want on schools, basically, because we got lots of money in stabilization funds. We've been putting money into stabilization funds and taking money out of the stabilization funds, so it's been an amount which has been slowly decreasing, but there's still money in there. Would last a few years. But that seems to have become the issue rather than what, at least I think, the real issue is. And the real issue is this. Based upon Granby's history over the last few years, I personally do not believe that there's any chance at all that the citizens of Granby will approve spending money to replace the high school. It's just an enormous amount of money for the town of Granby. And I haven't heard anybody else, I haven't heard any other parties involved in this talking about that issue. There may be alternatives to replacing the high school. There may be possibility of renovation. But on renovation, again, my understanding is that if renovations on a school building exceed 1/4 of the amount of the building, and that's not just in one shot, that's cumulative over time of money spent on renovating a building, that you cannot renovate it. You cannot renovate it with just what you think you want to do to renovate it. You actually have to bring the entire school up to code.
That's right.
Up to new code. So you can't spend just a small amount of money and say that'll fix the thing that we're worried about. You've got to fix everything. And I don't think Granby taxpayers will vote for that. I don't think there's any way. And I'm certainly open to any sort of arguments from someone who can give reasons why they think that would be the case, other than saying, I think that's the case. Because right now, we're in the top 10% of tax rates in the Commonwealth. Our home values are in the bottom 1/4. Tax rates are right up there with the best of them. So anything we want to think about the schools has to be done with the not near term, but medium term to long term thinking that somebody's got to figure out what is going to happen to our high school students. And I'd just like to hear what anybody thinks. It seems to me, though, that what ought to be done is a group of people from town, and it really ought to be from across the town, not one particular spectrum, one particular special interest or another particular special interest, to get together and talk about this, because this doesn't seem to me to be a question of if, this seems to me to be a question of when, that this is going to happen. And when it happens, unlike what we would like to happen, which is a little bit of time to think about this, a little bit of time to plan financially for what's going to happen, what happens is thud. You have a problem. You have a problem. You either cannot use the building, you may face accreditation problems, but you have got a big problem if all of a sudden the school is no longer usable. The rest of this is money. You want to take some money away from the town now? Fine, can be done, but that can only happen for a short amount of time. People seem to want to talk about cutting the police department budget. Seems silly, but you're not in fact required legally to have a police department. That buys you perhaps some more time. There are lots of ways to find money to spend that run right up against the same problem no matter what you do. Then in the long run, what are you going to do about high school? What are you going to do about high school students? So in one sense, it's almost not worrying about the short-term monies because we know the long-term problem is there, the long-term problem is going to approach, and the town is either prepared for it or hasn't prepared for it, but it doesn't stop the long-term problem. So if you want to spend money, there are other ways to spend money. The first year payback for the school building renovation project, which Granby approved, and which is going to be a wonderful school. It's about $900,000. The town could vote $900,000 out of the stabilization funds and pay that first bill from stabilization fund money. It would run the stabilization funds down, but anything is going to run the stabilization funds down. That would accelerate this process of finding out exactly what we should be doing about the school system. I'm not proposed myself that we spend $900,000 to pay for the first tax bill, but it's certainly an option. So in one way that may make it easier for this year's budget process. People want to take money out of stabilization funds. 2/3 of the people who show up at the meeting. You can always gather enough people to try to do that. Okay, it happens. It doesn't change what's going to happen in the long run. In the long run, we're going to run out of money, and we're not going to be able to replace the school. So that's what my thoughts have been about this budget process this year. You know, we can argue and argue. It's coming to the point where there's not much point in arguing anymore. The only thing that we're arguing about is whether we're going to have a decent amount of money or no money left when the crisis arises. I'm interested in any thoughts anybody has.
It's not much different than what we've been talking about for years.
Yeah.
It just seems like it's getting closer and closer.
Yeah, well, we've been kicking the can down the road, or rather other people in town have been kicking the can down the road. You know, and as, you know, preaching to the choir here, as everyone knows, my position is either we completely cut, go for regionalization, and accept that as with declining demographics of high school students, not only here, but on a nationwide basis, handling it that way. Or we figure out other sources of revenue for the town to sustain the school department and the schools in the traditional model that we've been having. But we do nothing, then you're right. It's just going to be a matter of time of when the crisis occurs. And it will be, as everything else, like all black swans. And when this is not quite a black swan because it's predictable, but the timing of it will be a black swan. It'll be unexpected and catastrophic. I mean, last meeting we had jointly, it was brought up that we have a revenue enhancement committee to figure out how can we find other sources of funds, public-private partnerships, things like that for the town. I don't think anything's further been said about that, but absent doing that, we are stuck with a static budget. We're stuck with static finances. It's not gonna get better.
I don't think from a practical point of view, we could enhance our revenue to the point of taking care of the shortfalls that develop every year in the school budget. I mean, we're talking $600,000-700,000. And I don't think you're gonna find that in,
You're not.
I mean, that's an awful lot of money.
You're not.
That includes millionaire taxes and
Mhm.
all the solar arrays you wanna have around. They'll all cut into it, but I think you're still on the short side.
Yeah, we looked at per pupil costs, and per pupil costs every place are rising because population is plummeting. Our school population is down by what? At least 25 to 30%, or it was a few years ago. Other towns, take a town like Hadley. You get Hadley's finances. Hadley has got a situation that is sort of ideal for a lot of communities. They've got an enormous base of businesses. And that gives them the ability to change their tax rates so that they charge businesses a higher
No, they don't.
rate.
Yeah, Hadley's got a great
Yeah, they
tax
do.
rate.
Yeah, Hadley charges a higher tax rate for businesses.
I could not find that. I could find only that the same rate was taxed regardless of the class of property.
That wasn't the figures I was looking at. Let me get those and bring those in.
Okay, because I would, when you said that, I went looking to see, and I couldn't find it. And what I was looking at, I could find it where it happens in Holyoke and Springfield and so forth, but I could not see it in Hadley. Now, Hadley certainly brings in a ton of money from commercial property. There's absolutely no question about that.
And that makes all the difference.
And that, no matter what, that's gonna make a
Yeah,
big difference. I mean,
We don't have that. There is no commercial activity of any substantial nature in this town.
No.
There is not going to be.
no. 96% of our money comes from residential property.
Yeah.
In Hadley, it's 63%.
And
So they got
of that-
37% of their revenue base doesn't have anything going into the schools.
And of that residential property, a greater amount percentage is becoming fixed income people. So, notwithstanding new developments.
But their tax rate is just shy of $13.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So John, I don't think there's anything more to say about it, except, you know, it's time to face the music.
It's gonna be. It's gonna be. Okay, do we have anything else to do tonight?
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
Yeah, he's here for a reason.
Oh,
That's right.
okay.
I was patiently waiting for your meeting,
Oh, okay.
enlightened in the fact, so. I have with me a reserve fund transfer request. And this is from the Office of the Treasurer. This is the first one that I know of ever from the Treasurer's Office. And I presented it to Chris Martin, discussed it, and he suggested that I present it, or at least offer an explanation in person, because it's a little unusual.
You didn't do a draft of a check to somebody, wire it to them by some person that you thought you
Contrary
knew?
to some other methods of operation that go on around town. This is a quasi-spent money. As a result of our large bond issue a year ago, February, the reporting rules have changed. And as such, we have to now file annual reports explaining our position in terms of, just like we did when we applied for the bond, basically, in terms of contracts that may, anything that might affect the capacity of the town to pay down the debt. As a result of that, I started the whole process in January, collecting information for our financial advisor to prepare this report. The final piece of the puzzle is waiting for the final audit results of the town's fiscal year 17 audit. I have the draft, but I don't have the final, so that's the remaining piece. In the meantime, just a little background information. As you may know, that the town has chosen Eastern Bank to be the financial advisor for the town of Granby since 2002. The arrangement that we had with Eastern Bank is that fundamentally all fees in normal course of operations, whether it's issuing bans or serial notes or whatever the case is, the cost was absorbed by the bank, and whenever we would issue large bond issues, for example, that's when we would actually pay for these services. Recently, things have changed, partially because of the changes in the reporting requirements. So those expenses have gone up for the bank. In the meantime, I received a bill from Eastern Bank in the amount of $1,500 for this reporting service, which quite honestly took me off guard, because I didn't expect it, certainly. But on the other hand, I certainly understand why it came. But at any rate, had I known about this back in November of last year, I would have budgeted for it.
Right.
Did not even knew it was coming for those reasons. So in any event, I don't have $1,500 to complete this report. And I do have monies in the financial advisor's account number, $500, but that was budgeted for the arbitrage reporting that we also have to do, which has not been spent yet, but it will be spent before the end of the year. So as a result of that, and I, hearing your arguments regarding reserve fund transfers and so forth, it's kind of interesting, certainly. But at any rate, that's my story.
Is this going to be a recurring expense?
A reoccurring expense. All right.
Has the
So
budget
you
been
budgeted
adjusted
for
already?
this year as
Well, yes, as of finding that out just within the past week. Also, as a result of the massive changes in the reporting in the Securities Exchange Commission rules and regulations, I was notified this past week that Eastern Bank is closing its financial advisor department. So Marie Pacella and Lori Lombard, who have been serving the town of Granby for the past 18 years or 16 years, whatever, will be, as of June 15th, unemployed. Maureen tells me that she's gonna retire. Lori is taking a position with another, there's only two other firms left in the Commonwealth, and that's Unibank and formerly Southwestern, I believe they call themselves Hilltop Investment Services now, I'm not quite sure. But needless to say, both of those firms, when I selected Eastern Bank, it was because of the fact of the fee schedule, the way they structured it. But both of those banks, Unibank and Southwest, have a significantly higher fee structure. So that I know that this same time next year, well actually February of next year, I will be facing probably a $3,000 item for the same reporting services that Eastern Bank is charging $1,500 for.
Are we likely to go with the one that Lori is going to?
That's my initial response, only because this took me off guard in terms of trying to interview. So yes, my intention right now is to follow Lori to whatever firm that she decides to join.
And Uni and Southwest have pretty much got identical fee schedules?
As far as I understand, yes.
And that makes sense to go there.
Exactly. So right now, following Lori until I can review and interview properly, just to get us out of this bind, certainly. It's also interesting, for example, the bans that have been issued. I learned today that the average charge for a ban from Unibank, for example, is $600 just to prepare the ban. A serial issue is $1,100. Now, keep in mind, I prepare all those things myself. I don't use them for that, with the exception of the serial, because of numbering sequences on the State House notes that I have. But I never got charged from Eastern Bank. So, fortunately, I won't incur those kinds of expenses because I prepare all those notes myself. But needless to say, it's a wake-up call in terms of what these fees really cost.
Steve, do we have to use an in Commonwealth of Massachusetts firm for this type of
I
service?
don't
or
know
do we go
yet.
nationwide?
I put some inquiries out to Bill Arago of the Debt Service and Local Services to get some of these questions answered. For example, today I found out that I can actually use the pre-numbered State House notes that I get from the Commonwealth. I can use those in my serial issues. I'll just use consecutive notes instead of XXX-1, 2, 3 or whatever. So I can use consecutive notes to at least avoid having to go out to Unibank or Southwest or anyone else for that matter. So yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm still researching that. Like I say, this is a week-old news.
Yeah.
And it's a shock, quite honestly.
Right. Well, I move we approve the transfer.
And Maureen's been quite responsive.
She has been wonderful, and she's provided excellent service. I mean, all of Eastern Bank has provided excellent service to the town in the past.
She's been there more than 15,
Yes,
16,
she
17
has.
years.
She was actually in State House, or State Street Bank originally, I believe.
No.
No, she's been terrific.
If you get any more information, would it be worthwhile to actually try to adjust your budget before the...
Yes. Well, I mentioned I got that information today in terms of the annual reporting, so I have that number, so I informed Chris, and he's going to be adjusting the treasurer's budget for next year.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, then all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And
So we got 3 copies, one's for me, one's for Chris, and one's for you.
if any further business before us?
No?
If not, then I take a motion to adjourn.
So,
Oh, yeah, I've got
Yeah,
one
one
thing.
more?
Do we want to meet with the school committee and ask them any questions? Or are we just gonna fold our tent and wing it?
Well, we haven't had a final discussion on the budget yet.
No.
And we've got.
Chris have a series of questions that he's waiting to get answered from them?
Yeah, we're still waiting for some information from there, so I think that we have to give it a little more time to get the answers in that have already been asked. And, because otherwise we'll be asking them for some of the same stuff. And if they're not gonna give it out in one place.
Oh, my list of questions, one was, have you responded to Chris's questions? Well, I figured my questions might get to the school committee rather than to the operating personnel, which might have a different outcome, and then maybe not. But Where did I hear this from? It could have been you, might have been Chris, that at the school committee meeting where it was said, you send us over some actual figures. I think it was Chris.
That's good.
Send us over actual figures. There was some reluctance and hemming and hawing on the part of some of the personnel to furnishing them to us.
Well, I think it's always a good idea to meet with the school committee. They're the significant player in terms of our budget. There are certainly a lot of uncertainties which should be appropriately addressed. So I would say let's meet them. We've already met them a couple times,
But there hasn't been any real
but there hasn't
chance
been any real
to
substantive.
speak about
Yeah,
anything.
and so I think we should continue that process.
Though you weren't there, and you weren't there, the meeting.
I was
last
at one though. I
week.
missed the last one. Yeah,
Yeah, the meeting last week,
yeah.
the joint meeting, there was no audience participation, and it was just, no,
But Chris had a lot of questions apparently.
no, those questions he had before, he sent that out
Oh, okay.
ahead of time.
Were these answered?
No, there was no discussion about any of that sort of material. The whole discussion centered on how they could come up with their shortfall.
Well,
And the one, and the selectmen offered to exceed net school's spending by a couple of $100,000,
mm-hmm.
and then asked what the school committee could do, and they more or less said they would look at about $70,000, which included their new technology stuff. So there's still a shortfall of in excess of a little over $400,000.
Yeah. Well, this stuff doesn't get resolved by not talking about it. It only gets resolved by talking about it. So I think we should continue meeting.
We'll have to get everybody's schedules for the next probably 3 weeks. This may not be possible to happen. For example, they set the last meeting date on a date when we had said we cannot get a quorum together for the date. I had set the meeting anyway.
Next week would not be, I don't imagine is something they would want,
Yeah.
because they have their public budget hearing on the 30th. And then sooner or later, they have to finalize their budget.
Let me get, I'll send emails around and ask for your schedules, and I'll send the same thing to them, see if they have any interest in it.
Okay.
All right? Yeah, fine. All right, any other issues we want to talk about?
And just while we're doing that, we probably ought to send them over some sort of a sheet with some questions that we know should be answered. So that we don't, so that they don't say, well, we'll get back to you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, if not, then we have a motion to adjourn in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, thank you very much.